Okay, so you ready to dive in? We've got a mountain of your requests about big data, so let's get right to it.
Let's do it. Big data is everywhere you look these days, but we're here to help you figure out what's what.
We're kicking things off with an article that doesn't hold back critical questions for big data from the Information, Communication, and Society Journal.
Yeah, it's a thought-provoking one for sure.
Right. And the authors, Danah Boyd and Kate Crawford, they're like, hold on a sec. Big data isn't just about having loads of information. They're saying it's a whole new way of thinking, like a total paradigm shift.
It's a complete game changer, they argue. They even compare it to get this Ford's assembly line.
Ford's assembly line. Okay, now I'm really intrigued. How do those two things even connect?
So think about it, the assembly line. It revolutionized manufacturing. You break down complex tasks into smaller, repeatable steps. And suddenly, production is way faster and more efficient.
Okay, I get that, but we're talking about information now, not car parts.
Right, but that's the point. Big data.
Yes.
It's like the assembly line for information. We can break down these intricate patterns and relationships into smaller, digestible chunks.
So instead of building a car, we're building what? Insights? Predictions?
Exactly. It's like assembling a puzzle. Each piece of data adds to the bigger picture, helping us make sense of complex issues.
That makes sense, though I feel like we often get caught up in the millions of data points thing and just assume bigger is always better.
Right, and this is where things get interesting. The article argues that just because we have mountains of data, it doesn't mean we're seeing the full picture.
Oh, absolutely. My Twitter feed. Yeah, that's not exactly the most objective representation of reality.
Exactly. It's full of opinions, biases, all sorts of stuff. And here's the kicker. Even deciding what data to collect and how to organize it. That involves interpretation too.
So even with these massive data sets, we're still making choices that could skew things. It's like if you only read mystery novels, you're missing out on a whole world of other genres and perspectives.
It's not just about the quantity of data. It's about having the right data and asking the right questions.
Which brings us to another point, right? How do we make sure we're asking the right questions and not getting lost in this sea of data?
And that's where context becomes so crucial. The article really stresses that data without context is pretty much meaningless. Like looking at a single frame of a movie, you have no idea what's going on, right?
Right. They use this great example about Facebook friends. Like those connections aren't the same as real life relationships. Just because you have 500 Facebook friends doesn't mean you actually know 500 people really well.
It's about the nuance of those connections, the context. We can't treat all data points equally.
This article is definitely making me think critically, that's for sure. But we've only just scratched the surface here, right? There's a lot more to unpack.
Oh, yeah, we're just getting started. You sent in a ton of fascinating stuff about how big data is being used in different areas. Where should we head next?
Okay, so this next piece you sent over, super interesting. It's all about how cities are using big data, like to actually improve things like transportation.
Oh, yeah. This is where we really see the practical side of big data,
Yeah,
solving those everyday problems we all face.
totally. It's like traffic lights, bus routes, even those ride-sharing apps, they're using data from all of that to make things run smoother.
It's like having a bird's eye view of the entire transportation system.
Yeah.
And with all that information, cities can start to optimize, like making traffic flow better, reducing congestion stuff that makes a real difference.
I read about this city, Barcelona, I think it was. They used big data to completely revamp their bus routes, and commuters were actually saving a ton of time.
There you go. That's the power of data in action. They looked at where people lived, where they worked, how they were traveling, and boom, they created a system that was way more efficient.
That's incredible. But it's not just traffic, right? What other kinds of data are they using? This is where it gets really cool, I think.
Oh yeah, some cities are getting really innovative, like using data to make streets safer for pedestrians.
Now that's what I'm talking about. How does that even work?
So they're looking at things like, where do most pedestrian accidents happen? What are the traffic patterns in those areas? They even factor in things like weather conditions. And with all that data, they can start to pinpoint those high-risk spots and figure out ways to make them safer.
It's like they're using data to build a smarter, more responsive city. It's pretty amazing when you think about it. But, and I hate to be the one to bring this up, but what about the potential downsides? Like, is there a risk of creating some kind of Big Brother situation where everything we do is being tracked?
I was waiting for that one. And you're right to be cautious, for sure. It's a tightrope walk, right?
Yeah.
We want innovation, but not at the expense of privacy.
Exactly. So how do we find that balance?
Transparency is key. Cities need to be upfront about what they're collecting, how they're using it, and most importantly, how they're keeping that data secure.
It's like we need to be able to trust that our data is being handled responsibly. And it's not just cities facing these questions, right? What about healthcare? That's another area where big data is making a huge impact.
Oh, absolutely. This is one of the most exciting and potentially transformative areas where big data is being used.
Right. I was reading this article about how big data could revolutionize personalized medicine. That's like imagine a future where your treatment plan is tailored specifically to your genes, your lifestyle, even your environment.
That's the dream. Right. Tailored treatments that are way more effective because they're designed just for you. But like we were saying before, it's not as simple as just having a lot of data.
There's always a catch, right?
Well, think about it. To make this personalized medicine thing a reality, we need massive amounts of data. Yeah, your medical history, genetic information, lifestyle choices. It's a lot to manage.
And that's not even considering the ethical questions, right? Like who has access to all this personal information?
Exactly. We have to talk about data security, privacy, all of that. And then there's the issue of equity. Will everyone have equal access to these personalized treatments? Or will it only be available to the privileged few?
That's the big question. We can't let big data widen the gap between the haves and the have-nots.
You need to make sure it's a tool for good, for everyone. That's the challenge, and it's on all of us to make sure we're moving in the right direction.
And speaking of using data for good, you sent over this other piece about how conservationists are harnessing big data, which I thought was super cool.
Oh yeah, talk about a game changer. They're using this technology to protect endangered species, and it's pretty amazing.
I was reading that they're using drones now, like drones equipped with cameras and sensors to track animal populations, even poaching activity. It's like giving a voice to the voiceless.
It's incredible, isn't it? And the amount of data they're collecting, it's overwhelming in a good way, but it's also a challenge. How do you even begin to make sense of all that information?
That's what I was wondering.
Well, that's where AI comes in. They're using artificial intelligence to sift through all that data, looking for patterns that humans might miss.
It's like having a team of superpowered data analysts working 24/7 to protect these animals.
Exactly. AI can analyze those massive data sets and flag things like, oh, this area seems to be a critical habitat, or hey, there's a pattern of poaching activity here that we need to investigate.
That's incredible. But even when it's for a good cause, like conservation, I can't help but wonder about the ethical implications of all this data collection.
You're right to raise that point. Even with the best intentions, we have to be mindful of the potential consequences. Like, how are these technologies impacting the animals themselves? Are we disrupting their natural behaviors? These are things we have to consider.
It's like even in conservation, that old saying applies, first, do no harm.
Exactly. We have to make sure that in our efforts to protect, we're not inadvertently causing harm.
So we've got transportation, healthcare, conservation. It feels like big data is popping up everywhere.
It's everywhere, and it's only going to become more prevalent. This is just the tip of the iceberg.
So where were we? Oh, yeah, big data is everywhere we look.
It's like this giant wave, right?
Yeah.
Crashing over everything.
Totally. And we're all just trying to figure out how to, like, ride it. We've talked about how it's changing cities, healthcare, even how we protect endangered species. But what about us as, just regular people? How's big data showing up in our everyday lives?
You're probably interacting with it more than you realize, honestly.
Really? I mean, besides the obvious stuff.
I think about it every time you search for something online, stream a movie, even just check the weather app. That's data. And it's being collected, analyzed, you name it.
It's like we're leaving these digital footprints everywhere we go.
Exactly. And those footprints, they tell a story. Companies are using that data to, say, personalize your online shopping experience. Like, have you ever noticed how you'll look at something online and then suddenly, boom, you're seeing ads for it everywhere?
Don't even get me started on the targeted ads. So that's how they get you. It's all big data behind the scenes.
That's right. It's all part of how they try to figure out what you're interested in, what you might buy.
Wow. So it's not just about selling us stuff, though, right? What else are they using it for?
Oh, it goes way beyond that. They personalize entertainment recommendations, curated news feeds, even online dating. Big data's got its fingers in all sorts of pies.
It's like big data is becoming our personal assistant in a way, which, I don't know, kind of creepy, but also kind of cool.
It's a powerful tool, that's for sure. But like we've been saying all along, it's not without its downsides.
Right, like the privacy thing. It feels like it's getting harder and harder to keep our personal information, well, personal.
And that's a huge concern. With all this data floating around, it's more important than ever to be mindful of what we're sharing, who has access to it, All of that.
Like, we need to be smarter about our data, right? Just like we try to be smart about the food we eat or the products we buy.
It's about becoming more data literate. We need to start thinking of data privacy as a right, not something we just give away without a second thought.
So much to think about. Where do we even go from here?
Well, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, that's for
We
sure.
really have.
But if there's one thing to take away from all of this, it's that big data. It's not just some technical thing happening in a silo. It's about us.
It's about people.
Absolutely. It's about how we collect information, how we understand the world around us. It's deeply connected to our lives and our relationships. And it's up to all of us to shape how this technology is used.
That's a powerful thought. So what? We just need to be asking more questions.
Exactly. Don't be afraid to be curious, to be critical. Who's benefiting from all this data? What are the risks? These are conversations we need to be having, and not just in some tech bubble.
We need to talk about it, like, everywhere.
Everywhere, in our schools, our workplaces, even around the dinner table. This is about our future.
Wow, okay. I don't know about you, but my head is spinning a little bit.
That's a lot to process.
In a good way, though. To all our listeners out there, we've thrown a lot your way, but this is just the beginning. Keep asking those questions, because who knows, it might lead you on your own deep dive someday.